So this chapter, we're going to review children who are blind or who have low vision. And after I upload this PowerPoint into the class, please go and check out this YouTube video here. So key terms, the legal definition of blindness is basically a person who is considered legally blind when his or her sharpness of vision is 20/200 or worse in the better eye with correction, or when he or she has a field of vision that is no greater than 20 degrees. In the past on campus, we have had students who have had zero peripheral vision. They were considered legally blind. This one particular student was considered legally blind because she had zero peripheral, including, above and below, as well as, and she had spots in her line of vision. And so as the course goes on and as these slides go on, we'll talk more about functionally blind versus legally blind. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a better understanding of what those different terms mean. So sometimes you may hear people talk about their acuity, or they may talk about having astigmatism. When you have poor visual acuity, this is actually a picture of a downtown area at night. I usually say it's Times Square, but I'm not really sure. I say it's Times Square because of all the lights over here. It could very well be Tokyo or somewhere else. But anyway, as you can see, if you're in a car, if you're walking, all the lights are blurry, nothing is sharp. If you're driving, this could be definitely a danger, not knowing just how close the cars are in front of you, not knowing how fast they are approaching you, things of that nature. Over here, you have the limited field of vision. Once again, self-explanatory. This particular person has exactly what I just described, as someone who has zero peripheral, including up and down. A lot of times when people think of peripheral vision, they think of just what's to the immediate left and right, being able to see that maybe their coffee cup is still on the table, maybe their phone is off to the right, maybe their book is off to the left, but it also includes what's above and below. So, being able to tell if you're sitting up straight, that is, being able to tell what's on your shirt, or maybe what's in your lap. You may not be able to see exactly like the words on if you have a book in your lap, you may not be able to read the words by not looking at it, but there's a book and it has writing and above you as well. But for a person who does not have any peripheral, this could possibly be their line of sight. So total blindness is basically once again self-explanatory, right? They're not only, sometimes people will be totally blind and they can still see, I'm going to say like shadows, but they're not clear shadows. So you may be able to you may notice that something that looks like a blob of a shadow has entered a room. Those with vision will be able to say, oh, that's Johnny. It may not be Johnny. It could just be anyone, but they are aware of a shadow of a person moving in. They may be able to tell that, maybe a little dog is there. But once again, they're not able to figure out exactly what the dog looks like, but they know that there is something small and, with maybe 4 legs. May not be able to detect the 4 legs, but based on the light detection and how that light is around that figure, they might be able to figure it out. And in some cases, they may not be able to as well. Those who are totally blind tend to learn best by touching and listening. They may use Braille, which is a form of communication. We currently have a student who uses Braille for a number of her educational materials. And because she lost her vision later on in life, meaning high school, in this particular case, her Braille ability is not at the same level as it would be if she had, started learning Braille when she was younger, but it's definitely catching up with her current abilities to be able to read and be able to do Braille at the same college level. Functional blindness, this is when you have just enough sight to be able to take care of your personal needs, basically your things that you need to do to function. Eat, drink, bathe, your toileting needs. You're not able to usually drive if you have functional blindness. For those of you who have driver's licenses, you're aware that you have to take obviously you have to take a vision test. And those who are functionally blind tend to not be able to earn a driver's license because they can't pass the vision test portion. They too tend to learn best with touching and listening, but they may, like I said, have some useful sight for their personal needs. Or in some cases, they may reserve their useful sight if they have like a presentation or something that's coming up that they're going to do maybe at church or in the community. In some cases, I've interacted with people who have said that, yeah, because I knew I was giving a presentation later on that night, I, didn't use my sight earlier on in the day, and I saved it so that way it would be, fresh for my presentation. Low vision, once again, self-explanatory, right? It still is considered a severe visual impairment, but they can use remaining vision for learning. In some cases, students may also wear darker shades, and so they're different than the shades that you would just throw on like, oh, it's sunny outside, but these are the ones that help block light even around in their peripheral vision, so it covers the entire eye socket. And then blindness in one eye, once again, is self-explanatory. This individual has lost vision in one, but he or she may have the vision in another. You could think of someone who maybe has a patch over their eye. Regardless if it's congenital or not, they would use their useful eye for what they need to get done in the education setting. So these are a variety of terms that you may see in an IEP or a 504 plan, or you may hear parents talk about it as well. So these common terms we've already kind of discussed. So when it comes to educational terms, if someone has low vision, you're going to hear them say low vision. If they're legally blind or, have total blindness, they may, depending on how the blindness is impacting the student, they may refer to it as functional blindness if there is some function left in the vision that remains. So it's really important that when you see these terms on any documentation, that you get a good understanding of what this looks like on every student, because it's going to look different on every child. I mean, similar to the autism spectrum, the characteristics look different, they play out differently. Just because a person has behaviors and has autism doesn't necessarily mean that all children, will have behaviors just because they have autism. The same with those with vision impairment. So it's important to know if they do have vision, what they use it for, and if they don't have vision, how they go about communicating and what works best for them in the education setting. When it comes to reading, those who have blindness in one eye tend to be able to, once again, depending on the student, but they put here standard print. In some cases, they may benefit from even ebooks, auditory books. The Kindle allows you to do a variety of things with the background, whether you can, adjust the brightness. You can change the background to be more of like a yellow, of an orange. You can turn on, I want to call it the sunset feature, or it may not be called the sunset feature, but basically, along with the clock, as it gets closer to sunset, it changes it from that bright white background to more of an amber, or you can make it more of a blue, all depending on your needs. And this is something that all of you can do right now with your Kindles. And, you don't have any vision things going on, but just if you feel it's softer on your eyes, you can approach it that way. When it comes to low vision, large print is very helpful for those individuals. And then it's important to find out how large that print needs to be. We have some students who do fine with font that's at 16 or 18 point, but there are others who need 28 and 30 point font. So you can imagine when it's time to take tests, their test can't be printed on a standard piece of paper. It needs to be printed on legal size paper, and then making sure the formatting remains. I mean, it's all the things that go into making that document accessible for that person with the that low vision impairment. Legally blind, once again, depending on how the blindness impacts their body, they may benefit from continuing to use large print, and or they may use Braille. And that is the same that remains for functional blindness and total blindness. But there are some people, which is not listed here, who rely on ebooks and auditory books to get their education as well. And that is definitely a reasonable approach to accommodating a student with a vision impairment. When students are out and about, it's important to, once again, promote self-independence. You want them to advocate for their needs. It's important also, and I definitely want you to check out the video here on YouTube, that they get the proper training that they need in order to be independent as much as possible that they can be. Of course, you're now following the lead of not only the child, if they're allowed to take part in this conversation, but also with the parents, the whole IEP team. You definitely want the child to get oriented with the space that they're entering, whether it be a classroom, daycare, camp, on campus. In the past, we've had students who lived on campus who had some type of blindness, and I always encourage them to come out to campus during the summer when there's less students. Not only get oriented with the campus, but we are a very, very hilly campus, even though San Diego is not necessarily known for its hills, but it's not the most accessible campus. So it's important to understand that walking down Calf Lane, you're walking on, I say cobblestones, but they're not, they're bricks. And so that could be a tripping hazard. So are you using a cane? If you're not using a cane, how do you get around? We're not one of those campuses that has the electronic sensor set up so it tells you where you are. So it's going to be important for them to orient themselves with not only just getting around campus, but getting around their dorm room and their residence hall. When it comes to mobility, the ability to move around independently, once again, these are people who can't drive, so you have to make sure that you have clear auditory signals if they're going to the bathroom. Sometimes people do not like to always be led by the hand, the shoulder, of things of that nature. So you want to be able to promote that independence. If they're going to walk so many steps in their turn right, then, kind of count it out with them. Counting it out is good, but also just getting them comfortable with it, because they want to get to the point where they can just leave the classroom, make a hard right, pace themselves, and then know the bathrooms, the women's bathroom, the girls' bathroom is off to the right. Don't want them walking into the men's bathroom just because vague directions were given, because someone took for granted that, oh yeah, well, they'll see the sign. Well, maybe not. And then there's 4 general accepted orientation and mobility systems. You have your human guide, which you kind of see here a little bit. We have had students who have come to our campus who have had the human guides before. Having a human guide or an assistant is not something that is provided as an accommodation in higher ed, but it's something that a parent can get their child through the Department of Rehabilitation, vocational rehabilitation. And then there's cane travel, which is, sometimes they refer to it as their walking stick, or there's just their cane, their walking cane, but that helps them with orienting themselves. If they're out in the community, if you've ever noticed those truncated domes, those little mats that you see as you're getting ready to enter an intersection, the walking stick helps students or individuals with vision. They feel the bumps, they hear the bumps, and they know, okay, now I'm entering, an intersection. I'm entering a walkway that crosses a road, things of that nature. Sometimes people will get on the list for a service dog, a seeing eye dog. And that's a possibility as well. That takes time. And then the electronic travel aid is something that's relatively new, and you'll see it in places like San Francisco or on certain campuses like Google, Facebook, well, when Facebook had a campus. And basically, once you download the app, it gives you auditory instructions of where you are. So, if you're on main campus, if you're on the traditional campus, and you get out of the car at Brown Chapel, if you have the app on and probably, earbud in or a headphone, or maybe you just have it up, it's going to let you know where you are, ask you where you want to go. So if you want to get to the cafeteria, it's going to let you know where you're approaching, how close you are, maybe where the steps are. It's something there that replaces the human guide, and an option for those who it works for. So examples of assistive technology for those with vision impairments include using magnifiers, and this could be anything from the standard Sherlock Holmes looking, magnifier, to There are like plexi sheets of paper that you can lay over standard pieces of paper or even legal size paper, and it magnifies everything there. Nowadays, you can use your screen to amplify things, to increase the size of things. Like I discussed earlier, changing the background. If the white is too bright, some people like to have the black background with the words in white just because it just helps their eyes. I tend to have that on my phone, not so much because I wear glasses, just because if you stare at screens all day, it's like all this light, light, light. If I look at my phone, iPad, or anything else, everything has a black background with only the white coming through, just because when you stare at screens all day, the last thing you really want to do is have to stare at another screen. There are also devices that increase auditory access to print. These are voice output devices. Basically, think of them as screen readers, and everyone has a screen reader automatically built in to their laptops, their tablets, their phones. And even now, you can go on your phone and find the accessibility folder or feature, the app. It looks different depending on the type of phone you have, or on your computer. And you too can turn on a screen reader and it will read everything on your screen. Or you can have it set up to where it only reads, you highlight certain things and it reads it for you. The Kindle reads for you. I believe it's called, it was just in my head, Kindle Speak? Amazon Speak? Well, I know there's Audible, which also reads for you, but within Kindle, there's a feature, and I love how when I'm doing these things, I can't remember things off the top of my head, but it exists in Kindle as well. And in some cases, you can order just that part of that book, and then, of course, you get to hear everything that everyone else is using their site to read. There's devices that help with continuing to, make the information accessible, like the Braille printers. You have Braille note takers. There's devices to increase independent travel. Talked about the electronic travel aids. And some of them incorporate GPS technology. That's a safety thing, as well as in helping the individual orient exactly where they are in a country, or where they are in a building in some cases. And there's the laser cane, which I have heard is preferred over the actual physical walking stick, simply because there have been people who have shared with me who have used the walking stick all their life, who have said that, if you come across a tripping hazard, or if the tip of your walking stick gets stuck in a gutter, like a grating, especially like in New York, it can obviously get stuck and then it jabs them in their abdomen, and that can be very, very painful. So they prefer the laser cane simply because it gives them, it prevents them from being poked in the tummy. But the downside of the laser cane is they have to rely on someone, at least with the people that I talked to about the laser cane, they had to rely on other people to charge it. And then, of course, then if it's not charged, then it loses its obvious use in the community. So everything has an up and a downside to it, but these are different ways to approach having their needs met, not only in the education setting, but also in the community.